President Trump is considering phasing out the Federal Emergency Management Agency, also known as FEMA. Xavier Walton has more.
Well, it certainly is back to the drawing board and a bit unsettling for state and local leaders after President Donald Trump saying he wants to scrap FEMA after the month of November. And by doing so, he essentially, what he wants to do is he wants to put recovery to disasters back on the states. Take a listen.
We want to wean off of FEMA, and we want to bring it down to the state level so the governors can handle it. That's why they're governors now. If they can't handle it, they shouldn't be governor.
The plan is to drain FEMA funding and shift emergency response to the states. You heard it there. By next year, even pushing them to form mutual aid agreements. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who oversees FEMA, is echoing the president, calling the agency ineffective, saying it needs to go away as it exists. And that sort of sentiment is setting off alarm bells within state and local leadership who believe right now they simply can't function without FEMA if a disaster were to hit. Keep in mind, some places after recent hurricane seasons are still picking up the pieces, still recovering. And then you have to, on top of that, add in wildfires. You have to add in tornadoes as well. That's why some believe that states simply do not have the budget and infrastructure to actually handle something like this. Quite the contrary, though, there is a level of concern that losing FEMA's coordination could lead to chaos. The president believes states are better positioned to handle the disaster response. Texas Governor Greg Abbott agrees, saying Texas is ready. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis supports defending FEMA as well.
So what's the message to people who might worry they might not get help as quickly as that would happen?
So the question is about President Trump's plan to dismantle the FEMA bureaucracy and empower the states. Excuse me. So I think the media is not honest about this because he is going to block grant the money to the states. And so we're not going to be left in the cold. But I can tell you that the FEMA bureaucracy is an impediment to disaster recovery. It is not doing a good job. Florida, we don't rely for preparation and immediate response. We don't rely on FEMA. We do it. We lead. We got local partners.
So again, this wouldn't happen until after hurricane season is over, when November ends. Meantime, already states are coming up with somewhat of a disaster plan of their own, preparing for FEMA to go away. From Dallas, Xavier Walton, News Nation.
Now, Kentucky has been hit hard by disasters for several years now, from intense flooding to tornadoes ripping apart communities. And in the recovery process, the state has relied heavily on federal assistance through FEMA. So if FEMA goes away, what now? To find some answers, we're joined by Kentucky State Representative J.T. Payne, who represents the Henderson area. Thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation. The State Representative, first off, what's your reaction to doing away with FEMA?
Right. Well, I definitely understand the president's desire to make FEMA more efficient and to make our disaster response more effective. And it might, at first glance, seem that state and local agencies are the first to respond to natural disasters, so therefore they would be best equipped to be on the front line and to carry that out from start to finish instead of a federal agency. However, where I would be concerned as a state lawmaker is I've seen the state budget and I see how much wiggle room we have, and there isn't a whole lot. So the message that I would send to the president is, if we're going to make reforms to FEMA to make it more efficient, to make it more effective, to where our citizens are served in a greater capacity, I'm all for that. But let's not hold the states responsible financially for a budget. FEMA gets a little over $30 billion per year, and most states, especially one like rural Kentucky, we just cannot assume that kind of burden.
Absolutely, and I do want to get to that in just a minute, but let me go back to, you're talking about reforming FEMA. How has FEMA impacted recovery here in Kentucky? Have you seen problems yourself with FEMA in Kentucky recovery?
I don't think I would necessarily say that we've seen a huge issue. Our local and state agencies are definitely the first to respond. It takes a lot of time, as residents in my own hometown of Reed and have experience with the flooding. It takes a long time for FEMA to collect the data to accurately assess the scope of any type of natural disaster, so therefore it just takes them a longer time to respond. Our local agencies and state agencies are usually the first ones there. They're responding immediately, and then oftentimes several weeks later, FEMA they will respond. So we haven't seen any that I'm aware of huge issues in the local area, but they are the last to get there. Now they bring the greatest help financially, but they are the last ones to be there and to come in with their assistance.
Okay, let's get back now to, you were talking about, how this would impact the state financially to take on the FEMA responsibilities themselves. This would be a huge change for Kentucky. Can the Commonwealth go it alone to address disasters, and do we have the money to handle disasters on its own?
I think I speak for the rest of our Republican caucus when I say that no matter what policies are adopted on the federal level, we're going to make sure that Kentuckians are taken care of. But if that financial burden does go to the states, it comes at a cost. And we're constitutionally bound as in the Kentucky General Assembly, which I think is great, to pass a balanced budget, which means we can't spend and we can't budget for more revenue than we're bringing in. So unfortunately, any type of burden that we receive from a change in federal policy, we have to reflect that by either finding ways to increase revenue or cutting somewhere else in the budget, which are always difficult things to do when there's so many wonderful services that the state provides.
What about staff-wise? Would Kentucky have the staff to jump in and do some of the things right now that FEMA is helping coordinate?
I think that's a very valid question. And that would be, again, goes back to the budget, to where, we're going to have to expand our own state infrastructure to be able to continue the level of response that we're able to provide as a collaborative effort right now. If it would be a kind of a siloed effort, we would definitely have to expand our own infrastructure.
Okay, all of this is going to take an amount of money. Do you have any idea, a number, how much the state would need to allocate to be able to handle disasters financially as well as, people power-wise, over the coming years?
Well, I can tell you that right now in our biennium budget, so those are every 2 years, we already allocate well over $100 million a year for Kentucky for disaster response and recovery. And that is just money that is typically used when we don't qualify for FEMA for a particular event, or maybe that's the money that's used in the immediate term until FEMA is able to get there. So already just that small of a scope, and we're already spending over $100 million in a biennium budget, and we're going to use almost every bit of that. So I don't know an exact number, but it would be well over that, because that's what we're already spending.
So what are we talking about, raising taxes to get that to happen?
I sure hope not. That's not something I would be in favor of, I can assure you.
Okay, all right. State Representative J.T. Payne, it's still very early. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about, and we'll be checking in with you to see how the process plays out here. But thank you so much today for talking with us about this very important issue facing Kentucky and states all around the nation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
We do too. Thank you so much.